Hello, how are you? I hope you're well. My name is Stephanie and this is lesson 2 of the B2 Perfectly Spoken course. B2 is an upper intermediate level, so at this stage you're feeling comfortable with using English to express yourself, but you need to focus on certain areas such as increasing your vocabulary and becoming more accurate, which is what I'm here to help you with. So lesson 1 of the course was a grammar-based lesson. Lesson 2, we're moving on to vocabulary. And our topic today is illness. So my name's Stephanie. This is lesson 2 of the B2 course. In this lesson, we will describe illness, talk about symptoms, and practice some verb and noun collocations. Now, collocations are a really useful way of helping you to become more fluent because you learn a noun and the verb that goes with it as well. So it helps you to become more fluent when you're using English to communicate. So we have lots to do in this lesson. Let's get started. Now, in the advert, I asked you 3 questions. I asked you if you could complete these sentences with the missing word. Number 1, I've got a dreadful throat. Number 2, don't eat so fast, you'll get. And number 3, you've cut your finger, I'll get a. Did you manage to find out what the answers are? Don't worry if you didn't. Well done if you did. Let's see if you were right. Let's check our answers together. So number 1, I've got a dreadful sore throat. Number 2, don't eat so fast, you'll get indigestion. And number 3, you've cut your finger, I'll get a plaster. How did you do? Okay, well, in the lessons, as you'll know if you joined me for lesson 1, in the lesson there's lots of opportunity to practice, and practice is really important because this is how you will remember the vocabulary. If you practice in different exercises, you become more comfortable with using it. So there'll be lots of opportunity in this lesson to practice. Okay, let's have a look then at some questions on the topic of illness. Are you often ill? And what do you do if you are? Do you go to see the doctor, or do you try to stay at home and take care of yourself, eating healthily, for example? And number 3, what types of illness do you suffer from? Of course, this can vary a lot depending on the year, the time of year. If you're living in a country where there are seasons and the seasons change from hot to cold, then it's very easy to catch things such as a cold or to come down with a fever or something like that. Obviously, in the spring months, you might suffer from an allergy. Maybe you have an allergic reaction to pollen or to a particular type of plant. But we'll be practicing talking about these. So these are some questions to think about. And if you're studying for an exam such as IELTS, it's useful to have some answers ready for this type of question because it is a topic that does come up. So have a look and think about your life and yourself. How would you answer these questions? Okay, remember, as we're moving through the slides, you can always pause and make some notes, which is a good idea actually. Okay, let's start then with thinking about what types of illness people can suffer from. Okay, so a lot of common everyday illnesses can be described with the word ache. As you can see by the illustration, we have various different types of ache: headache, backache, toothache, stomachache. And this word ache is a very useful word to use because usually you can have the body part, add ache on the end, and that describes what's hurting. If something aches, it means there's a pain there. So if you say I have a headache, it's a pain in my head. I have a toothache, it's a pain in my tooth. So the pronunciation is really important here. Let's have a look. So the pronunciation is ache, ache. So hopefully nobody is suffering from any of those illnesses, headaches or backaches. Good. Okay, now we're going to have a look at some commonly confused words. So they're words that have maybe a similar meaning or they're used in different contexts. So I'm going to show you 5 pairs of words. All I want you to do is to think, what's the difference? So it could be a difference in meaning, it could be a difference in use, it could be a difference in context. Have a look and see if you can think, make some notes, what's the difference between these words? So number 1, we have disease and illness. Number 2, bandage and plaster. Number 3, injured and damaged. Number 4, fever and rash. And number 5, I am sick and I've been sick. So remember, often they might have a very similar meaning, which is why they're often confused. But can you tell me what's the difference? Pause the video, make some notes, and then we'll check our answers together. Okay, how did you do? Let's have a look. Okay, so the first one we had was disease and illness. Now, disease is usually something much more serious and is defined by the symptoms that the person is suffering from, whereas illness is a more general word meaning a state of poor health. So, for example, scientists carry out research into diseases. But when we're talking in a more general way, I'm feeling ill, I have an illness. So that's quite a useful distinction between those two. Bandage and plaster. Okay, so as you can see, both of these are material used to protect a wound. The difference is size and severity. So a plaster is much smaller, a small piece of sticky fabric to cover a cut. So maybe you're cutting something in the kitchen and you cut your finger, maybe it's a paper cut. What you'd put on it would be a plaster. So for something much more minor. A bandage, on the other hand, is usually white. It's made from gauze and it's used to protect a much more severe injury or to support. So for example, if you've broken your arm, you have it in a cast and then you might have a bandage round as a type of support, usually white in colour, so different colours as well. Injured and damaged. Okay, this is an interesting one because the difference here depends on what we're talking about. If we are describing a person, then we use the word injured. If we're describing an object, then we use the word damaged. So, for example, if you think of something like a car accident being reported on the news, the reporter might say, a lot of people were injured and the car was damaged. So here, the distinction is what we're talking about. Then we had fever and rash. Well, both of these cause you usually to become quite red, but they are different. So a fever is when your body temperature is higher than usual. So when you take your temperature, you're feeling very hot, and your body temperature is higher than normal. You say, I have a fever. A rash, on the other hand, is lots of small red spots on your skin. So this could be caused by something like an allergic reaction. Maybe if you have an allergy to a type of plant and you touch the plant, you might get a rash on your hand. So they both cause you to become red, but for different reasons. How are we doing? Did you manage to get these so far? Let's have a look at the last one. So the last one was, I am sick and I've been sick. Now, perhaps when you were thinking about this one, you might have started thinking about the different tenses and thinking it depends on when you were sick. But really the distinction here is one describes the physical act of vomiting and the other is a general feeling of being unwell. So if I said to you, I am sick, it's a general feeling. I can't come into work today, I am sick. However, if I said to you, I can't come into work today, I've been sick, it would mean that perhaps you've got some kind of food poisoning or something disagrees with you and you have actually vomited. So quite different uses there with the word sick. Hopefully nobody is feeling sick. Hopefully you're all well and you got those right. Don't worry if you didn't. The point of being here is to learn together, so it doesn't matter. We'll have lots of opportunity to practice as well. Okay, so when you are ill, if you decide to go and see the doctor, you're going to have to talk about your symptoms. You're going to have to describe to the doctor how you are feeling and what the effects of the illness are on you. So the next section of the lesson is talking about symptoms. Okay, so let's have a look at this slide together. Doctor, what's the matter? Patient, I've got a sore throat, a headache, a blocked nose, a chesty cough, and I keep sneezing. Doctor, sounds like you have a cold. I'll read that through for you one more time. Doctor, what's the matter? Patient, I've got a sore throat, a headache, a blocked nose, a chesty cough, and I keep sneezing. Doctor, sounds like you have a cold. So when the patient was listing these symptoms, this is what he was doing. He's describing to the doctor what the effects were, and the doctor will use this information to make his diagnosis. So let's just check that we understand all of those symptoms. So, sore throat, we looked at earlier. That's when your throat is painful. A headache. A blocked nose is when you can't breathe through your nose, it's blocked. A chesty cough. And I keep sneezing. So, cough is when you do that, that's a cough. And to sneeze is that's a sneeze. Okay, do you know all of those? Did you get those correct? So let's just do another pronunciation check. The word cough. So often in English, the way we spell words is not how we pronounce them. This can be really tricky when you're trying to learn a language, especially if you're doing a lot of reading and you read the word and you imagine how you think it's pronounced. But unfortunately in English, it's often quite different, and this is a really good example. If you look at the spelling, C-O-U-G-H, but the pronunciation is very easy. Cough, cough. And it's quite a useful word to know because it's something that happens quite a lot. Maybe, for example, if you're in a meeting room and the air is very dry, you might have a cough. Good. Okay, so in that slide, we looked at the symptoms of a cold. Now I'm going to show you 3 different types of injury or illness, and I'm asking you, what are the symptoms of these? So when we have a look at the slide, pause the video and make a note using the vocabulary that you have. What do you think the symptoms are? Imagine if you went to the doctor, how would you describe how you're feeling? So try to give as much information as possible, not just one word. Try to give as many symptoms as you can for each one. Let's have a look. So what are the symptoms of, number 1, a migraine, number 2, influenza, and number 3, a sprained ankle? So we have a migraine, influenza, and a sprained ankle. If you're not sure what any of these are, maybe now's the time to do a quick check. But try to think of the symptoms yourself. See if you can use your memory, the words that you have, to tell me what the symptoms are. Okay, how did you get on? Let's check some possible answers together. There might be others, so if you've written down something else, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. This is just my ideas. So a migraine, it's a very nasty thing to suffer from, and the symptoms would be a severe headache. And I think here it's quite important that we use the word severe. It's not just a headache, we're trying to be descriptive. It's a severe, a very strong, very bad headache. Sensitivity to light, so it's very difficult to be in a very bright environment, and vomiting, or, do you remember the previous slide? Being sick, you could also use that. Did you get all of those, or did you have some other options as well? I think they're the main ones for a migraine. Okay, the second one was influenza, which we often abbreviate just to flu. F-L-U, flu. Quite a lot of symptoms here. We had cough, sore throat, muscle ache, tiredness, fever, and a blocked nose. So again, a lot of vocabulary here that we've talked about before. And number 3, the final one, was an injury, a sprained ankle. So hopefully if you didn't know what this was, you checked. Sprained ankle is when maybe you're playing sport and you move suddenly and your ankle that joins your foot to your leg is twisted in a way. It's very painful. So possible symptoms would be swollen ankle, pain, bruising, and difficulty moving. So swollen comes from the verb to swell, meaning to get bigger. Swell means to enlarge. So a swollen ankle means your ankle has got bigger. And let's just check another word here, bruising. Do you know what bruising means? What does bruising mean? So bruising is when maybe you knock your arm and your skin becomes a bluey purple colour. That's a bruise. So a sprained ankle would certainly have bruising evident on it as well. How did you do? Did you manage to get lots of ideas down? Hopefully you did. Okay, so the final part of the lesson, we're looking at verb and noun collocations. Don't worry if you don't know what collocation means, I will explain. So verb and noun collocations. So I'm going to tell you a short story. Last week, I had an allergic reaction to some food I was eating. My throat began to swell up and I had to have an injection. I was in a lot of pain. I made an appointment to see my doctor and he gave me some medicine to take. He told me I suffered from anaphylaxis, but that I didn't need to have an operation. I'm going to read it one more time. This time, have a look, pay attention to the words highlighted in green. So listen to me as I read it through again and pay attention particularly to the words in green. Last week, I had an allergic reaction to some food I was eating. My throat began to swell up and I had to have an injection. I was in a lot of pain. I made an appointment to see my doctor and he gave me some medicine to take. He told me I suffered from anaphylaxis, but that I didn't need to have an operation. Now, fortunately, that's not a true story, but it's a nice text because it has lots of these collocations in that we're going to have a look at. So, these are the ones that were used in the text. Have an injection. Have an allergic reaction. Have an operation. So these three all use the verb have, and that's the correct verb to use. So you just need to remember, have an injection, have an allergic reaction, have an operation. Then we had suffer from an illness. To suffer from an illness. So here, suffer means to feel the effects of. If I said to you, I'm suffering from a cold, it means I'm feeling the effects of a cold. I have a blocked nose, a sore throat, and a cough. Okay. To be in pain, to take medicine, and to make an appointment. Not to do an appointment, no, make an appointment. They're often commonly confused, make or do, but it's always make an appointment. So these are the ones we looked at in the text. What I'm going to ask you now, I've changed the order, and I'm going to ask you, can you remember, do you know, what's the missing verb? So pause the video, make a note in your notebook or on your phone, however you prefer to take your notes, or on your computer. Maybe you have a document open that you're storing your vocabulary. But see if you can remember what are the correct verbs. So we have 7 there. Do you remember the correct verb to use? Pause the video and write down your answers. How did you do? What do you think? Shall we check? Okay, let's have a look together. So the first one was make an appointment, have an operation, suffer from an illness, have an allergic reaction, be in pain, take medicine, and have an injection. Did you get all of those correct? Well done if you did. That was really good. If you didn't, don't worry. Maybe go back and you can review again. Okay, so now that we've practiced what the correct verb is, let's see if you can put these into sentences that are true for you. So, do you remember I gave you a paragraph where I'd made up a story about a situation using these verb and noun collocations? I told you about I had an allergic reaction, I described, and I used these collocations. So what I'm asking you to do now is to see if you can make a short paragraph or just simple sentences. They don't have to be a story. Can you make a paragraph and use these expressions? Let's have a look one more time. So can you put these into a sentence? Make an appointment, have an operation, suffer from an illness, have an allergic reaction, be in pain, take medicine, and have an injection. So this has been a vocabulary lesson, and with vocabulary, the best way to learn it is to try to make it personal to you. So when you meet a new word and you think that's a really nice word or that's a really useful expression, one of the best ways to retain it is to try to put it into a sentence that's applicable to you. So for example, if you are allergic to flowers, make a sentence. I usually have an allergic reaction if I touch this flower, because then you're more likely to remember it. So that's a useful tip. So this was lesson 2. Lesson 3, we are going to have another grammar lesson, and it will be question forms 2. So lesson 1 was question forms 1. Lesson 3, we're going to look at another aspect of questions. So we'll always have a balance between a grammar lesson and a vocabulary lesson. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. I hope you found it interesting and useful, and I hope you're well. I know we were talking about illness, but I hope you are all well. Thank you.